Joining me now to answer that question, Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, there are some Republicans who are worrying that by declaring a national emergency, the President could then open himself up to the months and years of legal disputes and get that all mucked up in the courts.
Well, the President is going to address the nation tomorrow, Laurie. He's going to lay out the facts and figures of what he considers to be a humanitarian and security crisis at the border.
Is he going to talk about the national emergency aspect of it?
What he has said about that is that he is considering it. He has never committed to it. White House counsel's office is researching the legal implications of it. But in many ways, would also let Congress off the hook one more time. And so there are probably some people who want him to declare it so that Congress, again, can fail to do its job. The Congress and the courts have failed to do their job. They've given us this crisis. And when people deny the use of the word crisis at this border, it's very sad to me because what is not a crisis if not an increase in the drugs, in the meth, the fentanyl, the cocaine, and the heroin coming over the southern border? 90% of the heroin, the government statistics say, come over the southern border. DHS says there's about a 73% increase in fentanyl coming over the border. Customs and Border Patrol just last year surveilled, captured enough fentanyl to have killed every man, woman, and child.
But a wall will take a long time to build. Playing devil's advocate here, I'm all for the wall.
The humanitarian crisis is very real too. I mean, it just breaks my heart. I'm constantly being asked, as are you, as a woman,
don't you care
as
about
a mother,
the children, Kellyanne?
Guess what? If you care about the children, you would agree with President Trump that they should not take this perilous trek in the first place. We have this massive increase in family units.
Yeah, we talked about it in the angle.
Coming here, and if you really care about them, as the Democrats and many news media claim they do, you would deter them from taking this perilous trek in the first place. It's an increase in family units, an increase in people coming from the northern.
But that requires a legislative fix. It's an issue. Sadly, you and I have been going around on this issue for years.
It requires admitting that it's true.
Congress,
and some are denying it.
But how do you get Tom Tillis, Cory Gardner, Susan Collins? I mean, they were great on supporting the president on Kavanaugh. They were great on that. But they're getting antsy about this shutdown. I mean, I'm hearing all the I'm getting calls from people. The shutdown. We got to. If the government has already shut down to the will of the people on this issue, your polling, when you were just doing the polling business just a few years ago, demonstrated that that's not changed.
2014. It was
that poll that you did, I still cite that poll. That was one of the best things ever done about level of immigration. People want it to stay the same or go down.
Yes. Well, particularly, and by the way, in 2014, you know, President Obama had the children at the border crisis. Secretary Jay Johnson at Homeland Security then wrote some memos I brought with me here tonight, very fascinating read. So we were doing the polling in the midst of that. And even then, Americans agreed that they want these children, by and large, to be returned safely to their home countries. Mexico has offered asylum and visas, safe passage to these Northern Triangle family units and unaccompanied children who are coming here. They can have their fears, their claims of fear processed while they're in Mexico. They don't want to do that.
I mean, I also want to get your reaction, though, Kellyanne, to a debate over just how many terrorists are apprehended at the border. The White House has thrown around a number of about 4,000, but U.S. Customs Border Protection says they encountered 6 immigrants with terror ties on the border with Mexico in the first half of the fiscal year 2018. We don't know about the second half. I personally think one terrorist is the problem. We know what one terrorist can do when you look at what happened in Paris, a few in each plane on 9/11. But you know what they do? They take that and say, oh, well, you're trying to scare the people, and it's a much smaller threat than you describe. Doesn't that hurt the credibility of the White House when we don't get these basic facts right and someone's not doing their homework in the way they describe it?
So let me, this particular presentation put forth by Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Nielsen is now briefed. The Democratic principals who were in the meeting, the staffers who were in the meetings over the weekend. Today, I sat there as she briefed about 50 reporters at a pen and pad with the vice president. And then she also did it with some other journalists. And I think this is important because on page 3, and as I believe it's on the website as well, this is the 3755 number does not refer to people at the southern border. Quote, known or suspected terrorists prevented from traveling to or entering the U.S. by DHS in FY17. I believe that includes in some international airports where Customs and Border Patrol says
overwhelmingly at the airport.
But the other 2 statistics on here were about the southern border, so I think it got unfortunately conflated by a colleague. But the apprehensions at the border of gang members, of known criminals.
Right.
These are all, again, the media
Right.
has this presentation. If they want to be honest,
well, they're
and cite the facts and
they're cherry
figures.
picking, but this is what they do. They do it to Supreme Court nominees if they get something off.
I think
they
that
do
was
it to all of us. Everyone, like, we all kind of make mistakes. We're talking, all day
That was
long.
an unfortunate misstatement, and everybody makes mistakes,
Right.
all of us. The fact is, it's corrected here, and anybody who turns a blind eye to the actual numbers of the human trafficking, the increase in the drugs, we are concerned about your children here in the United States not being subject to all these drugs, and we're concerned about their children.
Will this
not
be
making
personalized tomorrow
the vulnerable
night?
populations.
Is it going to be personalized? Are we going to hear about the people not? Because numbers, people's eyes glaze over. They hear 400,000 people across the border, like, oh.
In these private meetings, the president has made very many personal appeals. He feels the humanitarian
I hope that's
aspect
tomorrow
of this,
night,
and
too.
he's been making that clear. Please don't take your children. These vulnerable populations are increasingly showing up at the border.
What about the nastiness of the rhetoric? You and I have felt it personally. Big deal. We're big girls. We've dealt with this for years. But the comments from some of the Democrats who are revealing themselves day after day after day as this government shutdown goes on. Rashida Tlaib, newly elected Congresswoman, said this about her previous comments, profane, about impeachment. Let's watch.
I stand by impeaching the President of the United States. I ran on that. Very passionate, and I grew up in an incredibly beautiful, urban community of the city of Detroit, born and raised. We say, colorful things in interesting ways, but I tell you, the President of the United States is my focus. The residents back home are my focus.
That's just, I don't know why the presidents are focusing, except that they're all physiologically incapable of beginning or ending a sentence without saying Donald Trump 7 times, and she proved it. Let's go back to the context of her original profane comment. She said she had been talking to her son about becoming a congresswoman, and then she made that. But I think that she was brushed back pretty severely and pretty swiftly by Congressman Nadler, incoming chairman, certainly by Senator Joe Manchin, really blew back at her with respect to her comments that we don't speak that way, it's not necessary. And just this weekend, you saw the Democratic leadership in the House pulling way back on this notion of the I word, the impeachment. They're very worried about, I think, a number of these freshman members particularly coming in here and saying, I thought that's why we were here. Yeah. You're here to represent the constituents that elected you, and you're here to represent their interests. This president has kept us safe and secure and more prosperous, and if they want to get in the way with that, then they're part of it.
He's not going to relent on this shutdown if he doesn't get what he wants.
He's not going to relent on border security. His first and solemn duty is to keep us safe.
Wall or border security?
Well, he has said it's all the same, meaning it will be made of steel now, U.S. steel, American steel.
He's compromised. He's already compromised. They're not willing to compromise.
He compromised. The $25 billion number was never right. It was never real by the Democrats. But this is important because many people say you should see through it. The Customs and Border Patrol say you need to see through it. The steel slats are better for that. Well, they need to see what's on the other side.
Okay. Well, Kellyanne,
the president's listening to them. They're brave and they're putting their lives on the line at the border.
Personalize. Americans love personal stories.
No question.
Our old friend Ronald Reagan understood that. Personalize everything. Kellyanne, thank you so much.